I'm not going to jump pews or anything like that, but I'm probably not going to be stationary. What I want to do is take you through a journey tonight. I'm talking about abortion. I'm talking about abortion on demand. Okay. How you doing, Bob? All right. I want to, in this journey, I want to take you to a few stops. The first stop I want to take you to goes all the way back to 1973. How many, just out of curiosity, how many people know who Walter Cronkite is? All right. How many people have ever seen Walter Cronkite actually do the news? On television, yeah, okay. Well, I haven't seen him in person either. I did a little research and I got some rare footage of Walter Cronkite on January 22nd, 1973. Why is that date important? Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade. This is the Walter Cronkite CBS Evening News report on the announcement of the Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision. And in this clip, you're going to get some very revealing information about this topic. Now, that's just the first stop. After we do Walter Cronkite, I'm going to pick back up with the Alan Guttmacher Institute. I'm going to take you from 1973 all the way up to today. And by the way, I've given a copy of this for your group back there as a gift. This is from the Alan Guttmacher Institute. You're going to meet Alan Guttmacher in the Walter Cronkite report. At the time, he was president of Planned Parenthood. So tonight, I'm going to use Planned Parenthood data. Isn't that something? I don't agree with Planned Parenthood at all. Planned Parenthood and I, we don't have a good relationship. But for my own purposes, I'm going to use their data. I'm going to talk about this issue using their data. All right? So I'm going to read a little bit from this. And then I'm going to relate all of this to what it's like in my community, the impact of abortion in my community, which is devastating. And then finally, I'm going to tell you why I'm pro-life, why I'm doing it. Maybe if I'm ever invited back, I'll talk about the cost of doing what I do. There's a cost involved. And maybe I can tell you some other things too, but for the night, I'll just take you on this journey. I got 4 stops to make. So if we can we play the Walter Cronkite? Do we need to dim the lights or anything, or so they can see it? I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is
Yay.
CBS News with Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide in New York, George Herman in Washington, Leslie Stahl in Washington, Brett B. Graham in Atlanta, Peter Kalisher in Paris, Tom Fenton in Paris, Robert Shackney in Des Moines, and tonight, a CBS Evening News special report, the energy crisis.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy during the first 3 months belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government. Thus, the anti-abortion laws of 46 states were rendered unconstitutional. More on this story from George Herman.
In 2 related cases and 8 separate opinions, the 9 justices made abortion largely a private matter and ordered the states to make no laws forbidding it, except possibly during the final months. The court split 7-2, with Justices Byron White and William Rehnquist dissenting. In effect, the court makes abortion subject only to the decision of the pregnant woman's doctor. It ruled that states may make no laws restricting a doctor's right to decide his patient needs an abortion and to carry out that abortion during the first 3 months of a pregnancy. After that comparatively safe 3-month period, abortions may be regulated, but not prohibited by state law and for the benefit of the mother's health alone. Abortion is somewhat more dangerous at this stage, and states may insist, for example, that they be performed in regulated hospitals. Only in the final stages of pregnancy may states intervene and say no to abortion. The court's decision, written by Justice Blackmun, thus sets limits on the right to abortion on demand. One limit is the time when doctors believe the fetus may be able to survive outside the mother's womb. At that point, usually in the 7th month of pregnancy, the state may take legal action to protect the unborn child, even forbidding abortion except to protect the mother. The newly liberalized abortion law brought immediate reaction.
I think that to raise the dignity of woman and give her freedom of choice in this area is an extraordinary event. And I think that January 22nd 22nd, 1973 would be an historic day.
In this instance, the Supreme Court has withdrawn protection for the human rights of unborn children, and it is teaching people that abortion is a rather innocuous procedure provided that there are proper legal safeguards. I think that the judgment of the court will do a great deal to tear down the respect previously accorded human life in our culture.
One of today's plaintiffs was an anonymous former mental patient identified only as Mary Doe, 22 years old. CBS News correspondent Fred Graham talked with her recently.
Now, the first two children you had they been taken away from you?
Yes, because I couldn't take care of them by myself and I couldn't with my husband.
And now I believe you had one more, and it was also put out for adoption, wasn't it?
Yes, I put it out because of my husband.
Now, after you were unable to get the abortion for the fourth pregnancy, what happened?
Well, I had to go on and have the baby and have it adopted out.
New York State, among others, already have liberalized abortions. Now the rest of the country must follow suit. The White House offered no comment, but President Nixon has always strongly opposed liberalized abortion. Other opponents are now talking of a constitutional amendment to reverse today's ruling. Until then, if the experience of New York State is any guide, America will eventually have one abortion for every 2 births. George Herman, CBS News, Washington.
Cook, the Catholic Archbishop of New York, called the decision a shocking action. Cardinal Crowe of Philadelphia termed it an unspeakable tragedy.
I think that's it. Yeah. In this video, you see Alan Guttmacher. Alan Guttmacher at the time was president of Planned Parenthood. And today we have the Alan Guttmacher Institute, which is the not-so-former research arm of Planned Parenthood. And I'm going to be reading a little bit from their report later on. Another thing they mentioned is the Doe, Mary Doe. She's pro-life today. She's pro-life today. And the child that she allowed to be adopted, she's developing a relationship. She suffers quite a bit. She's was at one point loved by the abortion industry, but now that she's become pro-life, they hate her. And so she's got a lot of issues that she's still working through. But I really want to give some credit to, come on in, Father Frank, a good friend of mine, a priest for life, and they have come along her side and really strengthened her spiritually. And so I'm really grateful for that. Another thing that you get from this video is they mentioned New York. New York's a big deal. New York's a big deal. It was already legal in New York. Actually, in California, if you're talking about California, it's been legal since, I think, 67. Yeah, Ronald Reagan. He actually said that it's the worst thing he ever did as governor of this state, or probably of any of his political career. But he legalized it here in California. So they mentioned New York, and I'm going to talk a little bit about New York later on. And then finally, they already knew, even before it was legal, they already knew it's going to be, for every 2 live births, there's going to be 1 abortion. They already knew. They already knew. Now, the only question was, and the only way that the ruling could have been stopped, or the only way it can now be overruled, even now, is that the justices have to believe that what's on the inside of a woman is a human being. That was a question at the time, and it's still a question today. All right. That was then. That was abortion back then. If you're old as I am, you were alive back then. I got a chance to march with MLK when he was a little boy in Detroit. When I was a little boy in Detroit, and I got a chance to march with him in Chicago. So I can remember America, what it was like before Roe v. Wade and Doe versus Bolton. And when a woman had a difficult pregnancy, the medical community wanted to save both. It wasn't either or, it was both and. Sometimes they were really quite successful. They saved everybody. Sometimes they lost one, sometimes they lost the other. But the industry was trying to save everybody. body, because at the time, in the 60s, before 1973, before Roe v. Wade, what was the inside of a woman was a human being. Even in Planned Parenthood's own brochure, which I have a copy of on my website, in my library on my website, you can see that Planned Parenthood says, oh no, it's all about birth control, not abortion, because abortion takes the life of an innocent human being. That was Planned Parenthood. That was in their own brochure. Before Roe v. Wade, what was on the inside of a woman was a human being. Today, ladies, it's not true anymore. And they want you to believe that. And unfortunately, many do. That was then. Let me take you up to today. I'm reading you from the very latest report from the Alan Guttmacher Institute, the former president of Planned Parenthood. This is Planned Parenthood data. Now, I don't trust Planned Parenthood data for a very good reason, and particularly Alan Guttmacher Institute. I believe it was in 2009, Lori? 8. We caught the Planned Parenthood, we caught the Alan Guttmacher Institute lying. Bold faith. We took their report, we analyzed the report, and we reported data that, that they didn't report or didn't want to report. And we caught them lying. It got so bad nationwide that the Alan Guttmacher Institute actually took down the report. The report's entitled Fact Sheet, Induced Abortion in the United States of America. But when we went public with it, they actually took down their report and then put up another fact sheet. You know, of course, the original report must not have been much of a fact sheet. These were different facts. But in the new report, they came in with some new facts. And since then, they've been publishing it. That's why it comes out in July. It used to come out in January. If you want to see that, that's also in my library on my website, where they have sort of changed the game a little bit by way of just redefining things. But for tonight, I'm going to read a little bit of it. You know about what abortion was like back in 1973. Let me read from here. We're talking about the incidence of abortion, then I'm going to talk a little bit about who has abortion, and then I'm going to stop. But again, I'll leave this here, and there's another copy of it here if you ever want to just take a look at it yourself, and you can go online and look at it. This is their public report, and this is about the facts. Here they are. Number one, half of pregnancies among American women, regardless of race, are unintended, and 4 in 10 are terminated by abortion. 4 in 10. You can do the math. 21% of all pregnancies, excluding miscarriages, end in abortion. 21%. In 2011, 1 million abortions, legal abortions, were performed. Now that's down 13% from what it was in 2008, when it was 1.21 million. About 1 million abortions happened every year. And from 1973 all the way up until this report here, it was 53 million. And today we're knocking on the door of 60 million abortions. And if I go back to 1967, where it was legal in California, Mississippi, and one other state, Colorado, thank you. It's even more. At least half of American women will experience an unintended pregnancy by 45, and in 2008, abortion rates, 1 in 10 women will have an abortion by age 20. And 1 in 4 will have it by age 30. And 3 out of 10 will have it by age 45. Who has abortions? Let's see here. According to the Alan Guttmacher Institute, 18% of U.S. women obtaining abortions are teenagers, and they're aged from 15 to 17. 6% of all abortions from 18 to 19 years old obtain abortions, and 11% of teens younger than 15 obtain abortion. They're 0.4, very small percentage. Women in their 20s account for more than half of all abortions. So over half of that 1 million abortions a year, we're talking about women. Women in their 20s. 33% of abortions then come from women aged 25 to 29 specifically. Non-Hispanic white women, just white women. And white women account for 77%, white folk, all of white folk, account for 77% of the U.S. population. And about half of that is women, just white women. And alone, they account for 36% of all abortions in the United States of America. Sort of almost a one-on-one ratio. Black women account for 30%. Except for we don't represent in total 77% of the population. At best, we're in between 12, 13, or 14% tops. Yet, according to the Guttmacher Institute, 30% of all abortions come from my neighborhood. We're only at best 14% of the population. It's a genocide. Alan. 37% of women attaining abortions identify themselves as Protestant. 37% identify themselves. They're churchgoers. They got a pastor. They're sitting in the pew. They're singing in the choir. They're in the Bible study tonight. Protestant. And 28% identify themselves as Catholic. 65% of that 1 million a year, it comes from the Christian community. People who say they love the Lord. He heard their cry and he pitied every groan. Lord have mercy. And we don't talk about it. Women who have never married and are not cohabitating account for 45% of all abortions. About 61% of abortions obtained by women who have one or more children. When I was standing outside of an abortion clinic, it was not uncommon for me to have a conversation with a woman, and she's already a mother. She has 1, 2, or 3 other children already. 42% of women obtaining abortions have income below 100%, not just barely below, but below 100% of the poverty level. And the poverty level for a single woman with no children is $10,830 a year. Wow. 27% of women attaining abortions have income between 100 and 199%. They're extremely poor. The reasons women have abortion, according to the Guttmacher Institute, this is what I've been